Well, hi, Momtellectuals. I'm talking with Heather today. So in part one, I'll give her a chance to introduce herself, but I'm really excited about this. This is part one of our conversation, and we're talking about the defining success for yourself. And Heather has chosen not to have children. And we're going to be getting into that because I want to not only say that that's a totally valid choice, but there's pushback, and we're going to get into what it means to be really clear on a decision about what success means for you. And Heather's going to share her story about what is around her decision about that. But also when you get pushback about your decision, how to deal with it. So hopefully we'll get into that. So I'm going to give Heather a chance to introduce herself, and then we will share a celebration before we get into the conversation. So hi, Heather.
Hi, Tamsin. Thank you. This is so exciting. And thank you for people who are interested in listening to this topic, who most likely will be moms and are interested in finding out more about the reality of being somebody who chooses not to have kids, not be the stereotypical mom, right?
Yeah.
So just a quick bit about me. I'm based in Guelph, Ontario. I do personal growth life coaching to help people get their mojo back and find the love within. So really focusing on recovering from stress, stressful circumstances, breakups, that type of thing, to really go into real deep self-discovery. Right, which is I would just say that's the root of the issue of stress circumstances. So yeah, so essentially that's, and if you wanted to, all the links are there if you wanted to find out more information about me as well.
I will post about how to get in touch with you. I think, is Blossoming Heart Guidance the name of your company? Or?
Blossoming Heart Guidance is the name of the company, and I actually need to add that I'm a children's author. I've written and self-published 2 children's books, which you can also find on my website. So.
Okay. Awesome. Yes, I'm excited to have this conversation because I'm just launching a book from when we record this in less than 10 days. I think I'm 9 days now from my official launch. So yes, it's very exciting and a whole journey. Yeah. We may get into talking about that a bit. But I like to start the first part with a celebration. So what are you celebrating today?
Huh. I mean, from a very businessy aspect, I'm celebrating that one of my core programs that seems to be getting momentum. Like, people are interested, and there's good response and sales. So it feels like there's, it's like, you're hitting on a pulse of something. So I'll celebrate that, and I will also celebrate really stepping into being, it sounds crazy because I've already done this, but really stepping into owning being a writer, right? Creating time for it, learning about more, like taking the courses and learning more, and just it's an ongoing journey of honing the skills. So really celebrating that I'm taking it way more seriously. In that, as serious as you can take writing.
Well, yes.
You need to,
Commitment. I'm celebrating that I am just about to have my book launch, and I'm actually really excited about the party that I have planned. I'm not a party planner, but I've managed to get excited about it because I've focused on celebrating, inviting people to celebrate with me, my stuff, but also bring their own celebrations, kind of like we are just doing just right now, because it's such an important thing, I think, in feeling successful and enjoying life and having fun, that we actually take the time to celebrate. So I was really having a hard time. I'm not a party planner. I plan events, but I often plan events not to celebrate so much, but as to make a space where people can bring the painful stuff. So it's quite a shift for me to say, we're gonna have a party.
We're in a happy zone, we're in joy zone, all is well.
I mean, fun is one of my core values, but I usually say, I bring the fun, and it's just, anyway, but so I'm excited. I created a theme and an idea for myself that I'm excited about from something that I was like, oh, I gotta do this to promote something. And it was,
Yeah,
it was
yeah,
boring.
totally.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
no, you do. You really have to. It's such a key quality. And I would say even the summertime is that time of year where it's about celebration. And traditionally, and we can go into a whole like pagan history perspective, but it's important. It's so important, and especially because the laborious time of fall, and then we go into the solitude of winter. So we need to like really celebrate. It's such an important part of keeping our spirits alive.
so
Congratulations.
Thank you.
It's a happy dance.
It is such a, I'm looking out and it's such a bursting time of year.
So much. Yeah.
So let's get into our part one, our topic, because I really, this is another, celebrating is one really important thing I touch on in the book, but another one is the overall theme of the book is you have to create your own personal definition of success. Right. And so part of the problem is, I think, the whole paradox of success, getting all the things, doing all the things, but then feeling miserable, is when there is that fundamental mismatch between what's right for you, but what you're told you ought to be doing and who you ought to be. So I couldn't think of any more glaring example for me, especially since I work with mothers, that in most situations, women are supposed to not only be mothers, but want to be mothers.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I certainly, I love my son very much. I wanted to be a mom since I was relatively young, but I also had that child-free part where I was getting my education and doing, getting my education, getting a job, finding a guy. I didn't just want to, no diss on single parents, but honestly, I was raised in a very traditional view that it was, you get married and then you have kids. So there was a lot of judgment. I was raised around that. So there was certainly a time in my life where like, I want to have kids, but later. But there were definitely, I could still hear the messages, oh, I'm supposed to, I'm expected to. And I wasn't, I didn't feel I had to push back against that, but it was such a glaring thing. So I would like you to tell your story, because I'm pretty sure not only maybe people, and hopefully some people will need to hear about that particular decision, but also that it's okay to have decisions that go against what you're told.
Like what the pressures are, right? Absolutely. No, totally. Thank you. No, and I really appreciate the dialogue about it. I would say it's all about the dialogue, right? And that, so to bring it back, I would say I marked the point at 5 years old. And at that point, and I mark it just because, at the time I was living in Jamaica with my parents, my mom and my stepfather, and there is a lot of, I would say even more pressure that I felt there to have kids. It was just an automatic thing to, girls are going to become mamas. And I say that with respect for the culture, but it was very much a sense of, so always it was like, oh, when you become a mom, when you become a mom, when you become a mom. Sorry, my phone is ringing. And I defiantly, there was something in me that said, I don't want to be a mom. And it wasn't about, it was more, I don't want to have kids. It wasn't even about that I don't care, or I don't like animals, or I don't like kids even. But there was something in me that said, I don't want to have kids. And it became, at that point, it almost solidified something in me, because it was coming at me so much, right? And then it was, I would have to say that my mom was a university educated, free-spirited, liberal-minded person. So I didn't feel as much pressure coming from her per se as it was the world around me. But she would still make the comments. She would still be like, oh yeah, when you have kids or when you get, she would just assume that. And I've noticed that I've heard that from some moms where they say, I have to stop doing that to my girls because I don't know, right? And so but I didn't feel she was like, okay, well, you make your choices, Heather. She had this perspective. So I'd say that helped not have the mom just automatically put me into, just because you're a girl, you have to play with dolls. Just because you're a girl, you have to care for the other kids. Or like, she didn't put me into those gender stereotypes, right?
Okay.
So there's a little bit of a, I already had a bit of, my personality was a bit strong, shall we say. And my older sister, like, it helps to be the youngest, but my older sister was a bit of what we would describe as like the girly girl. She liked to think, she had long hair, she liked to play with dolls, she dreamed of being a mom, blah, blah, blah. And it's almost like I was trying to define myself against my sister. So I'd say a healthy rebellion started at a young age that led me there, but it stuck with me. And that's what I find amazing, because there wasn't the talk about child free. There wasn't a talk about, that wasn't even a term. It was considered to be like, there were all of these things. Like, I didn't even feel like I had a sense of belonging or identity in the world of like, look at that woman, she's child free. I didn't have, that wasn't even a thing. Right.
Yeah.
So, even in Canada, so definitely the experience, I mean, it's just there. It's in our culture. Girls have babies. And if you're like, I would say I grew up in a time, I was born in the 70s, and there was now the Wonder Woman thing and the girl power thing was there. Right. So I remember feeling that in grade 6 and grade 7, and that a woman can do whatever she wants, but she has to have a kid and she can do whatever she wants. Right. So, but I didn't, to me, I was just so, and I would say one of my saving graces, I liked school. I liked achieving. I liked getting A's. I liked, I just liked the intellect. I liked learning and thinking beyond boxes and all of that. So I think I always could argue myself out of well, why? Well, why? Well, why? So I naturally had a questioning personality. And I also really didn't take everything as spoon-fed, right? So it's a combination, I would say, like socially being ripe at the time where there was girl power. There was this notion of succeeding, and I got rewarded for succeeding. And I also wanted to meet my potential, right? So I knew that there was,
Sorry, just saying, no, you can't come in. I'm in an interview.
Okay.
Working from home, pandemic, it is what it is.
So again, I wouldn't say it was a thing, but I just had a feminist aspect to me, I guess you could call it. And I started to get into activism and politics and women's issues and women's rights in university and all of this. So that was more my focus. I was just always curious about gender, breaking out of the gender box, like on some level. I just didn't understand it. And then I would also describe it as the same thing. I grew up in a home, my mom divorced my dad. I didn't see her as happy with my dad or with kids. Not out of, like, she would even say, and both my parents both have said they shouldn't have had kids. And I don't take that personally. I completely I get it. Like, they were both free spirits. They were both, like, I would describe my dad probably would have been better with the open relationship lifestyle of the 1970s, right? My mom was somebody that really, she's an artist herself. She, again, free thinker. She wanted to travel. Like, there were all of these things, and people can go, oh, that's so selfish and blah, but I get it. Like, she wasn't happy with the traditional stereotype of being a mom, right? And she still did her, she's still there, and I still talk to her, and definitely there's been challenges with it, but she also ended up going into deep depression, and I think from a stressful marriage, and she ended up getting hospitalized. And I know that she just didn't know, she didn't have the inner resources to be able to handle being a mother. I look at motherhood as one of the most, I look in awe at mothers. I'm like, how the hell do you do it without a nervous breakdown? Like, I don't know. I have a hard enough time getting myself out of bed in the morning, much less a child. Like, and I think that's part of it is I looked at it like there were qualities of, like, whenever the thought of being pregnant and it coming out of my body, I'm like it's not out of, it's just pain. Like, I just look at it as like for me, it's like my nervous system couldn't handle it. I'm like, I'm like, and I look at women who are mothers in such awe of how strong are you to do that. And then not only that, raise the child and hold a job. And it's a resilience I don't have. Like, I look at it going, I would crumble. And I know people go, oh no, you'll get over it. Like I'm like, no, I know my limits. I 100% know my limits. And
Well,
I
and
said, my mom had,
a lot of us do
right?
crumble.
I don't get it. I don't know how. And it's fine. I look at it with and it's the same thing. I saw my mom struggling as a single mom, and she got in a second marriage, and he didn't support her with being a mom and financially. Like, he was not a good partner for her to have kids with. And I look at it going, my God, I just don't. I saw the struggle, right? And I saw it so personally and deeply. And I always said to myself, if I had kids, I would have to be okay with being a single mom. And I'm not, because I don't have the family support, like the extended family, to help me out if I was pregnant. I don't have, like, I didn't have those, the feelings of resources of support, right? And because I damned if I would be staying in an abusive relationship. And I've been in really toxic relationships. I've been in them and I got out, and I knew it would have been hard to get out if I was in a if I had kids with the person. So I almost describe it as like, I heard the stories of other women and where they felt stuck and where they felt, and heard their regrets too. So it was one of those things where I sort of like, I went in and I was in, I would say, fear and awe of motherhood. Like, I can't do it. Like, I couldn't see my body doing it. And at the same time, I wanted to go, well, just because I'm a girl, why do I have to? And then also I'm pain averse. And then I also had, like, I was like, unless I can't even imagine. I met two wonderful partners and they were meant to have kids. And I'm like, I don't want kids. We have to break up. You need to find a partner to have kids with. So I can't even say if I found the right partner, because I did, to be a parent, right? So that's essentially the story of, and it wasn't until like social media that I learned of the term child free. And that would be like 6-7 years ago, right? And I went, oh, there are other people like me. There are other people that feel like they think like me. They love their animals. They have fur babies. They're, like, I went, oh my God, there's a thing. It's a thing. But it was definitely like, I didn't feel, I lost friends who they ended up having kids and their focus is on their kid. Like, it's been a challenge to stay true to it and to, like, I never, like, I knew, my limits knew that I couldn't give birth and raise a child, but I was like, but now I'm lonely, right? Like, where are my people? Like, why am I the only one that came out of it thinking like, am I the only one that came out of it thinking, am I jumping off the cliff here? Like, like, where's my tribe?
Yeah, and I think that's one reason why I gravitate towards stories like this, is because you sharing your story, hopefully, other people won't feel as alone, because it was one of the hardest things.
Mm-hmm.
And I know now I was totally not alone in having a really hard time with a newborn.
Right.
Actually, I was okay until he was about 4 months old. And right around the time my hair started falling out in chunks was, so I knew it was partially hormonal, but I got postpartum mood disorder, and it was brutal.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I've said to other people, like, we look around and everyone else looks like they have it together. Mm-hmm. In whatever question, however we feel we don't have it together or feel alone, we look around and we often don't see other people kind of like us. And I said, for somebody who is really struggling, the people who are out here that we can see are either hiding it, which a lot of we're taught to do, or they're like me and hiding back at home so no one can see me because I wasn't coping.
Exactly. Yeah.
So,
and it's like secret, and our world just, well, COVID, it made us more isolated in that way and not connecting, but it's just our world and our techno world, there's the image of perfection going on in social media, and then the reality, and not enough. Like, there used to be communities of support that we'd be like, hey, I got your back. Hey, how are you doing today? Hey, what's going on? That kind of sharing, for sure. And I would say, I mean, I can go into we'll chat more about the resilience aspect, but I would describe it as part of what would end up happening is I would go into groups, but there would be the conversations, like in your 20s, people are still like finding their mates. And, you know, if you want to go into even, I don't even want to call it heteronormative, but more like the coupling, right? So it could even be, you know, a queer couple and, you know, everyone's trying to find their family, create their family, right?
Okay.
But you're still single in your 20s. Usually people are still single in their 20s. You still have those friends you can call because they don't have a partner or they don't have kids or they don't have this. And then all of a sudden, my 30s, I was like, oh, I either have to go to baby showers or, oh, and then I'm like, I feel inauthentic because I'm not particularly, I don't want to hold a baby because I don't want to hurt it. And I don't want to, you know, like, I'm like, this isn't my path. Like, it's just not my path. And I want to hang out with you as a friend still. And I want to hear all about your life. And I want to hear about how you're doing, but not just as a mother, right? And it would be like, you know, like I want the intellectually stimulating conversations. What books are you reading? All these things. So there was like, but then I felt bad because I know that they're struggling, you know, like I'm like, but I can't, I struggle too, but I don't feel like I'm struggling as much as you. So I get like blame my problems.
Well, I feel very drawn to helping moms, partially because I feel like it's the best way to help their kids.
Right,
but
right.
When I started my entrepreneurial journey, I thought that was enough. But then I realized I don't identify with women, quote unquote, just because they're moms. Because my main thing is I love ideas.
Right.
I love ideas. I love talking about ideas just like this. This stimulates me. This gets my brain. I mean, I have a freaking PhD. Like, I like ideas.
Right, right. You like the realm of knowledge and theory and
and talking about something other than poop.
Right? Exactly.
And it's not that as a mom, poop is still, you know, poop is but I realized one of the reasons why I think it's all retrospect. I don't know the answers, but I really feel like part of why I ended up with such bad postpartum depression was that part of my life was gone.
Right.
You know,
and I feel this is where I feel for a lot of women, because it's like the career, like, and we were raised like, I'm like, okay, so we were raised to go after your dreams and be all you can be and all of this and have a child. And it's very challenging in this world to balance both at the same time. And at the same time, it doesn't mean that this part of your career self or your smart self or your curious self didn't die as soon as you had a child, but you just don't have the time, energy, or community to keep you going for a certain chunk of time, right? And I don't know all the realities of it, but it does make me, this is where I would say at a bigger level, I feel, I don't want to say women were duped, but I would say it feels very unfair about and there's a lot, we're told this dream, right?
There's a lot in the pandemic, so many articles, and now I'm drawn to articles like this, but so many articles in the pandemic are like, it's the women who are having to leave the workforce because their kids have to stay home from school. And that similar sort of thing, it does feel very, very unfair that most of it, you know, it's usually, if there's a single parent, usually the mother's the primary physical caretaker and all of these things. And it just really slammed women hard.
Completely.
And that's just one example. It's just kind of blown up a cultural problem that has really always been there. And now we're in Canada. A lot of these articles are from the US, where it's like a lot fewer social supports and other things, but it still sucks in Canada.
I know, right? and exactly. And I think and this is what I always questioned when I was younger was like, okay, so just because I have a vagina and breasts doesn't mean I have to nurture every single living thing, right? Like, I really don't. And it doesn't make me cold. It just makes me boundaried. And you do you, I'll do me, and I'll take my dog and I'll take care of him, and I will take care of any child that's in my midst. I will, because I don't want them to get hurt, and I'm a compassionate human being. But there's such a pressure, the emotional labor that women do in our jobs, it's just this expectation that you're not allowed to say no, and you're not allowed to say this doesn't make me happy, and I'm exhausted. And it's like there's this thing that it's a quiet veil of expectation, and that if you don't do it, this is the stereotypes of child-free women or people who choose to be child-free. which we'll talk about later, the differences. But
Mhm.
the stereotype is that she's cold, she's selfish, she's Cruella de Vil. She might as well be killing puppies, right?
Oh,
So
yeah, yeah.
right? Like that's what it is. And that's the stereotype. And they've got books and books about it, but it's like people go, oh, and there's always the selfish word. And I'm like, what is more selfish? Like bringing a child into the world, even if you don't want to, you're a miserable person, but you think you have like, or you're doing it for all the wrong reasons.
Yeah.
Right. I'm like, that's like, we have to reframe women taking care of themselves, that it's okay for women to take care of themselves and to set limits and to say no and say, this is going to make me happy. And being happy isn't selfish. It's actually the greatest gift you can give to the world. Right.
Yay.
Like, we don't need more unhappy mothers.
No,
right?
And I think that's a great point. Let's pause. We are just going to jump right into straight to part 2, but momtellectuals, you will have to wait for another week to actually hear part 2. But yes, I think let's what I want to start. I'm going to give a little teaser for people for next time.
Awesome.
For the next
Excellent.
time, because I really want to one of the reasons I wrote The Paradox of Success, I kind of envision people reading it who don't yet have that firm idea of what they want. Whereas you're a little bit of you're kind of another half. You do have a really firm idea of what you want, but you're getting pushback and that. So you're almost step 2. You're like book number 2 of what.
Right.
Because creating our own personal definition of success, we then have to defend it if it doesn't match what other people think we should have. So
totally.
Right. Okay, well,
bye for
now. Bye for now, momtellectuals. We will be back. We will be back shortly.